안녕하세요. 조소입니다. 감사합니다. Les Sserafim Unforgiven featuring Nile Rodgers. Okay, this is interesting. This is an interesting setup for a comeback, you know? Let's see. Nile Rodgers, an earlier generation musician, has done a lot of work throughout the decades, like the 80s and 90s, and a lot of the stuff he's done has been used by like other groups in pop music, sampled and such, and it seems interesting. Let's check out what they have going. The last Les Sserafim song was Impurities. So this is probably going to be quite a like a shift from what that sound was like, you know. So let's see here. Okay. Pretty cool camera work here.
Unforgiven, I'm a villain, unforgiven, 내가 길을 걸어 Unforgiven, I'm a villain, 사실대로 기억될 unforgiven. Yeah, what you want, 불편함이 get the face, wanna shut me up. 사냥감을 거듭해, 저는 warriors. 너의 게임에 난 문제 없어, such a freak, 고치가비. Let me tell you about the seraphim. 내가 제일 싫은 건 내 그대물림. 어둠 속 불을 켜 match your rebellion. We gonna keep breaking rules, gonna keep unforgiven. Yes, I was bleeding. 힘없이 늘 줘야만 했던 sound. But I write. 바란 적도 없어 용서 따위는 앙금기를 겨눠. Watch me now. Now.
Oh my goodness.
Unforgiven, I'm a villain, unforgiven, 내가 길을 가다. Unforgiven, I'm a villain, 사실대로 기억될 unforgiven. 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 한계 위로 남겨지는 우리 이름. Unforgiving. 내 스타일로 living. 내 방식까지 원 없이 또 한국말로 아주 철없이. Get started, let's get started. 미래 그 앞에 새겼던 나의 소리. 신념이 지면 난 villain, I'm not the Cinderella type of a girl. Unforgiven, yes I was bleeding. 힘없이 늦어야만 했던 sound. But I write. 바란 적도 없어 용서 따위는 앙금기를 겨눠. Watch me now. Unforgiven, I'm a villain, unforgiven, 내가 길을 걸어. Unforgiven, I'm a villain, 사실대로 기억해. Unforgiven. Unforgiven. 한계 위로 남겨지는 우리 이름. Unforgiven, I'm a villain, unforgiven, 내가 길을 걸어. Unforgiven, I'm a villain, unforgiven, 내가 길을 걸어. Oh, I will never be a clown. Oh, 보게 될 거야 난 Oh, 내 목소린 좀 loud. Oh, I don't care to shut it down. Unforgiven. 한계 위로 남겨지는 우리 이름.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay, okay, okay. So I was waiting to see what type of like if Nile Rodgers was actually going to play, be featured on, in some way, and perhaps he did. Yeah, okay, we see here the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so they have sampled this sort of theme song from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's an old spaghetti western film, a Clint Eastwood type of movie. Um, or not type of movie, but one of the movies that Clint Eastwood did back in the day. There was, a whole like series of these spaghetti western style movies, but this is probably the most well known um, example of theme, right? It's the theme music from these western style movies. So what I really take from this is sort of a pastiche of western actually culture. So like it obviously there's some of those rustic western like cowboy type of references, the cowboy hats, the chaps and the horses and the arrows, all of that stuff. But there's other elements too, at least visually represented from what you would call Western culture. Some of the one of the scenes where she was swinging the sword, and she had this sort of gauntlet on, like that's very Western. European, that's armor, like a knight's armor. So there's a bit of a pastiche work of some Western themes here. Um, it does seem to be sort of that. What would you call it? Like conceptually, it's a sort of alchemical like synthesis of Eastern and Western together, um, which is cool. It's fun. It's a fun idea. It's okay. So we're definitely in four. Like pretty minimalist, right? Like it. There's not it. What I think is really interesting is there's not a lot of synth that's going on like in this track. I've heard a lot of synth, like this week, and so there's not really a lot of that. The like verse sections, a sort of intro verse section where the vocal line is doing a lot of the rapping parts. That has there's good rhythms in those rap parts. So they sound very contemporary. That da 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 da. We're in four, and there's more eighth note subdivisions for sure. Um, I was trying to count. There might be some rhythm guitar parts in there that are going to be leaning a little bit more into the 16th note subdivision, but there's not a whole lot, right? Maybe some of the percussion. It's quite, I don't know, it's because if it's minimalist take it, and there's actually a lot more space there, but that's not like far removed from the concept, I guess, right? Like if you're talking about a Western, uh, using a spaghetti Western theme. If you watch one of those movies, you'll see these big wide shots of the setting, and the West was, it was a time when like there was a lot of open space. There was a lot of undeveloped land and territory that wasn't really occupied by much of anything, and a lot of times because it's quite harsh, without the technologies, without like modern civilization, so that's why when westerns, it's always like the town, and it's like two roads. It's like one road that goes up to the courthouse or the chapel or whatever, and then there's another road that intersects it there, and you just have shops all along the road, and then there's the main building where like the could be the courthouse or whoever's like running the town or managing the town is there. And there's like a saloon and the barber shop and the guy who makes hats, and you know what I mean, like it's all very sparse. It's all like just base elements of what you need to have the sort of functioning township there. And if the wide shots will show big expanses of basically nothing, you know what I mean? So I think that might be like intuitive to what I'm hearing in the mix anyway, for it being so minimalist. But there, like I said, some good rhythms in the vocal parts that actually seem very contemporary. So another little contrast between modern and something that was, from a different period, an earlier sort of period. To me, it felt like this song kind of doesn't have a chorus, as it moves through the verse section, and then we get this what to me really sounds and feels like a pre-chorus section, and this is when you hear more of the guitar sound come in, and there's it's actually really cool. It's a really cool like Western it's kind of rustic guitar progression that's going on there, but it builds up, right? And it's like there could have been, or it feels like there could have been this really great sort of chorus sound that fits like right at the end. It's like leading up to it, and but what we got was this sort of cinematic cut, the scene with the arrow, and I was because what I did was I started counting that. So what I call the pre-chorus section was going through, and then it sort of ends and the arrow takes flight, right? And I'm counting in my head the beat. I'm going, okay, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and it's just, I'm like, wow, okay, 3 measures, 4 measures, like, I'm like, oh, we just kind of dropped the mix here really for a minute, and it was fun. I was like, okay, I don't know where I'm going, but it was fun, right? And visually it was cool. But that pre-chorus section I think it's the best part, at least compositionally, what's going on. I really like the warmness of the sound, like the sort of acoustic guitar sound that comes in, as well as the sort of, there's a subtle sort of like color change that occurs in between your verse section and what I'm calling the pre-chorus section. And it's like, it's not bad. It's quite the subverted expectation, you know what I mean? Like, if you will, perhaps conceptually it's more like it's unfinished or unsettled. Like the West was unsettled, the Wild West, like it's called wild because it had to be sort of tamed, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's interesting though. It's interesting. So very very cinematic video here. This was a cool shot, lots of diegetic sounds, street traffic sounds sort of move in. And did you notice like that sort of swirling ambient sound of air and wind, and then we transition to the interior shot, and it's all that drops out of the mix, and now there's much more reverb. It's actually pretty good audio engineering for the sequence here. No footstep sounds. You know what I mean? There wasn't like clunk clunk. I would have put like spurs, like the sound of spurs, right? Chink chink, right? Like that would have fit, right? Like the sort of clangy sound of spurs. I'm here in Texas, and like this is random. This just popped in my head because I thought about spurs. But during the we have the rodeo that comes to town, right? And it's there for like a couple of weeks. it's kind of a big deal in a state like Texas. And there was I work downtown, and I work at night, and there was one night during this rodeo event that was going on, and I'm walking down the street, and I'm hearing like this sound, right, this chink, 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 and I'm like, what is that, And I turn around, and it's like there's some, because a lot of people do this, they go out with their full getup, and he had like the hat, the jeans and the boots, and he had his spurs on. So when he was stepping, it was like chink, chink, chink. And I turned around, and I was like, oh man, like he's at one end of the street and I'm at the other end of the street, and I could already hear that theme, right? That dooloo, like, oh, this is like a showdown, man. We're at the OK Corral right now. So it was funny. It was funny. But I would have put spurs, or I would have put that sound in there, like right at that point.
Unforgiven, I'm a villain, unforgiven, I could get there, unforgiven, I'm a villain, 시대로 기억될 unforgiven. Yeah, what you want, ripping on me, get the face, wanna shut me up. 사냥감을 거듭해, 찾는 warriors. 나의 게임에 난 문제 없어, such a freak, 꽃이 coffee. Let me tell you about the Sserafim. 내가 제일 싫은 건 내 그대 believe. 어둠속 불이 켜 맞춰 rebelling. We gonna keep breaking, rules gonna keep.
So you do have like a snare hit. It's a kind of a light snare hit on the 2 and the 4. That kick sounds like a kick in an 808, but a pretty soft 808. It's like a very round sort of bass percussion beat that you get there, but it has these little groupings, right? Boom, 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 boom. Like it's a nice syncopated rhythm. It's not like fitting that pop groove, that sort of stock pop beat sound that you get, right? It's doing something different. And then of course you have the little dan 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 dan. It's a little riff that's going on there, guitar. It's kind of it's a very like twangy kind of sound. It's low, like it's this mid-low sort of like register or tone, like pitch-wise, I guess. But it has a lot of twang on it, which is what gives it that feel. You know what I mean? Like that sort of rustic type of a feeling there. But so the vocal actually does go into the 16th note rhythm. It's a little bit tricky because of the syncopation, but once you hear that snare come in, like, okay, then you can pit down your 2 and your 4, right? 2 and 4, the second and the fourth beat in each measure. It's a pretty brisk tempo, right? It's nice. It's a nice upbeat type of tempo, actually.
Unforgiven, yes, I was bleeding him up, 신을 줘야만 했던 sound.
Okay, so these descending, like, see, everything sort of shifted, right? Like, it got a lot brighter, it got a lot warmer because of the guitar sound, but also their vocal melody line, it goes up, right? That verse part, they're sitting kind of, they're doing the rap sort of style, so there's a bass level that you always want to be sort of bouncing on, right? So now we've taken it up, and we have this nice descending line that's going on, and the shift in the pitch there, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's this brighter sort of higher frequency sound now, this area, right, that we sort of move into, and the guitar work is so, it's not overly complicated. It's quite simple, right? And that is sort of homely. It is sort of like, it's Western, living on a farm, living on a ranch, not having access to too much information. Most of the, like, if you were somebody playing music at the time, it's very likely that you didn't really understand it technically, but it was passed on to you. Somebody else, you watch them play and you listen to them play, and then somehow or other you acquire a guitar and you start recreating the sounds that you heard, right? So this is very like intuitive to the type of guitar work that's going on here. It would be interesting to see the chords because, you know, there are sort of like cowboy chords, the sort of open position chords, but I don't quite get that from what I'm hearing. But it would be an interesting, so it's sort of like applying a more traditional type of technique to perhaps something that is a more contemporary or at least a different style composition.
But I ride 파란 절도 없어 용서 따위는 안 금기를 겨워 watch me now.
It sounds like we got piano, like the bass rhythm part is. It sounds like there's a piano there, at least chunking out the bass chords. It's playing whole notes. It's just holding it, throughout the entire beat count, and then moving on to the next chord. And then you notice the percussion too. It's that like wood blocky type of sound. It's maybe perhaps mimicking or trying to demonstrate the sound of the horse, the sound of horses, right? Like the that sort of clock sound that is often associated. So see again, like this pastiche of all of these Western themed concepts, sounds and visuals, and all of this stuff is put together. Like this part right here was because doesn't it, okay, look, listen to some of this again, right? And this feels pre-chorus. This is what this feels like to me, right? See how it went up at the end there? It went bum bum. There should be a resolution. We should resolve into another chord here, right? And boom, like that would be when the chorus part comes in. So to me, this feels like so pre-chorusy, and then just like, because this little cut will play, and then it will come back into that verse intro sort of section, and you probably could even resolve back down to that. Like you probably could just cut clean from here into, I imagine that's what the audio, like, version, the album version sounds like. But it's so, like, there's so much space here, right? And it kind of reiterates or reinforces this idea that, like, we're not doing like a chorus part really, which is not, I don't mean it to be critical or anything. It's I think that the space is there, and it could have been used to like drop a really awesome chorus section, but we're just doing something different. So alrighty. I see there's so much, like, even the way the sound is engineered, like there's just so much space, right? And the way that hits, right? The way the explosion hits there, like the chorus could have totally come in and been like, boom, like it was perfect. It was a perfect setup. Even to drop back into this. Because it went dun, dun, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. Like it could have, you know what I mean? Like it works, but there's so much space there. Like they could have dropped a freaking like crazy chorus section. I guess this is okay. See, there's so much contrast, right, in between that pre-chorus part. So, okay, I'll take that as a chorus. As a matter of fact, let me see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll take that as a chorus. I will. But it
giving 내 스타일로 living 내 방식까지 원 없이 또 한국말로 아주 철없이 Get started, let's get started 미래구 앞에 새겼던 나의 소리 신념이 지면 난 villain I'm not the Cinderella type of a girl Unforgiven, yes I was bleeding
There's just like there's such a strong contrast, right, when we get to this pre-chorus section, and the chorus feels more like the verse than anything. It's there, but man, I had to listen to it again. You know what I mean? Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it as a chorus section. I will. I'll give it to them. I think it could have stood out a little bit more. I think they could have, maybe kept the mix a little bit more full, a little bit more busy. That's maybe what I would have done with it, and then come back to like that sort of verse section mix that had a lot more space in it. But I'll take it for sure. So I think it's the way that this chorus section starts then, because of the that sound sort of reiterates the verse sound, or at least like what the song sounded like in the beginning when it started. This sort of second half of the chorus section, then when we get this little it ascends and it descends, right? Dun, 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 dun. Like it goes up and then it steps back down. The shape of that is much more articulated and much more defined, so it starts to feel more like a chorus there. So I think it's just the way that this sort of chorus section comes back in after that pre-chorus section. It's me, I don't like to be critical or sort of a negative thinking, like I try to focus on what's there, right? And but I guess it just seemed to me like the chorus could have been a little bit stronger, especially off a really, really awesome pre-chorus. Like the pre-chorus is done really well. It's done incredibly well, and it builds up so nicely. Just with the shift in the entire color of the sound, and like everything works so well, and it's such a nice build up, and like it sets up a resolution so perfectly, and it just sort of I feel like there could have been more off the end of that pre-chorus section, off of what the chord progression is sort of setting up there, the kind of resolution that it is. Like all the parts are there, right? Like all the parts are there, and it could have came in like crazy, but it's I'll give it there. Okay, I see. I have it now. I found, the real shape, song structure here. Well, the audio production on the vocal right there, so I didn't notice that before either. There's a lot of the compression and the reverb are being sort of tweaked a little bit, so it feels like it kind of shifts, left to right, like you're in a tunnel and you're, hearing the like it's shifting as you're moving a little bit to the side, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of a cool effect, actually.
get a shootout.
Nice. So, okay, it's yeah, they did well. There's the vocal rhythms on the rap parts, good, very good. When that beat dropped right before this last sort of chorus section, that was actually really nice. The way she kind of dropped the soft palate and really sort of like opened up, using a lot of her vocal like back here, uh, to give the body of the line there at the end. That was a nice use of that space that was opened up when the mix kind of dropped out. But it's cool. It's cool. I do. I think it's fun. It's a fun idea. I think it's about time somebody used that theme in a way. You know what I mean? Like that Western good, the bad, and the ugly type of theme. It's like, it feels like that should have been done a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like but it works with the concept really well. This sort of meeting of Eastern and Western elements. You know what I mean? It's very cool. I always like Western stuff. It's just, you know, I'm always gonna get a kick out of that. But they did well. They really did. They did a great job on the vocal deliveries here. It's an interesting song. It is. There's some interesting stuff going on there. I kind of do want to hear like just the album version without the space for the cinematic cuts, because I'd really like to hear more of that pre-chorus like chord progression resolving into the chorus section. I still think that, you know, there could, because the pre-chorus is really nice, man. It's really, really nice. Your chorus section then and your verse sections, they're fun. They're really fun. They're minimalist. So like what they do is fun, but they kind of sit like pocketed well within what it is that those sections actually do. And it's such a nice shift whenever that pre-chorus section comes around. Just that whole change, you know, that happens in between there is fantastic, and the build-up is incredible. Like that's why I just, you know, and the cinematic cut, especially on the first go through, right, when we first hit that pre-chorus section, and then it builds up such a nice tension. Like, it's a nice tension. That's a weird way, right? But this is kind of what happens in music. Like, you get this dissonance, this level of dissonance, this tension that gets generated, and what you are waiting for is like that resolution to bring you a relief from it. Like, yes, this feels good. And so it's interesting when somebody like subverts you by setting you up for it and then like not giving it to you, right? Like, because the way the pre-chorus in this song works, it does it so, that tension is so good, man. It's like it's almost pleasant just to stay there. Like, you know what I mean? It is a level of like, oh, it's so warm. It feels so just, it has that organic feeling. It's played instruments. I hear the piano sound, the guitar sound, and it's like, oh yes, this is cool. I love this, right? And like, I love to be right there, and it's like it's getting closer and closer, and then like nothing. You know what I mean? It's weird. It's like what it does, like where it leaves you, it's kind of like, uh, and I just, yeah. So I think maybe if I listen to the album version, in other words, if I hear a more straight, like, that with not so much of a gap in between that pre-chorus build up and then moving into the chorus, I think okay, I can get into that, right? Because the flow is not sort of like interrupted. The actual like flow of the song stays together. So I think that would be sort of like an easier listen, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, okay. But the video it's cool. It's like, I love it. I love all the visuals. I think it's great. I think I said a really cool pastiche of all of these Western sort of motifs and themes and little ideas here and there, and it's cool. It really is. I do appreciate that, but it broke up the flow for me. You know what I mean? And I didn't. I guess I was expecting or anticipating, once I was hearing it, once I was pulled into this awesome pre-chorus section, I was like anticipating like, oh, this is gonna be good, and it was good, but it wasn't. It didn't have the weight. It didn't have the like the impact, right? It was like, oh man, and you could really do something with that, right? Like it could have been the scene, like it could have been that shootout scene, right? That showdown where you got the one cowboy here and maybe the villain is there, and they're like, it cuts back and forth, and like you see one and you see the other and and then the music's building up, and like that's what happens, is build up this tension, and they're both just waiting for the clock to like strike 12, and then they're gonna draw. And that pre-chorus section, like it has that, it totally catches that feeling, and that like, oh my goodness, this is getting good, but you don't get that, like you don't get the shot, right? You don't get like that bang, you don't get that, oh, like this is it, right? And it moves back into its groove, which is fun. Like I said, it's a fun groove. It really is. It's a really, really fun groove. And perhaps that was the intent. Perhaps the whole idea was just to subvert that sort of well-established expectation, So I could wrap my head around it for sure. It's just an interesting approach to it. Like it isn't the first time that something like that's been done. It reminds me of when Red Velvet did Zimzalabim, and they have that. I think it is again the first time the pre-chorus section comes around, and it's building up, and then she just goes, huh, and like that's it. It moves back into basically the main groove of the song, and it was funny. Like it was a bit of a joke, like a bit of a musical like comedy thing, right? Like, of course, because they knew they were building you up for it, and then she just kind of like took it away, like, nope, you don't get it. And it was funny. I was like, oh man, that was cool. And this is more like it should have had more gravitas, like for what I think the concept was doing, right? Of course, this is just me like seeing it and hearing it for the first time ever, so it would be interesting to hear maybe from some of the people behind the scenes who are making it exactly what the take is. But I think it's something like that, like somewhere somewhere in the ballpark of what it is that I'm interpreting here. But it's a fun song. It's definitely like for what we got with Impurities was like a real laid back sort of R&B track. It's a great song, right? It is. And then this, I was like, okay, this is going to be different. I know this is going to be quite a change up. We're going to shift gears here. It's going to be something else. And so, and it's even different from like Fearless, or the stuff I heard before, right? Like this isn't even like that sound. Like this is something completely different now. Like it's not what Impurities was, but it's also not what the earlier stuff was. So they're reaching into sort of like another area now. Like this has a different feel and a different vibe altogether, perhaps because of some of that infusion of this Western cultural sort of culturally informed things, right? Elements and stuff. But it's interesting. It's cool. It was fun. I do like the pre-chorus section. I thought that was awesome. And the like I said, it's just about time somebody really made use of that good, the bad, and the ugly theme music, right? That theme sound. This is like, it should have been done a long time ago. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else did do it, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't stand out in my memory as anything that was too significant, I guess, if you will, right? This seems like the first real competent meaningful type of like use of it, but so that's cool, right? But it was fun. Les Sserafim Unforgiven. It was fun, man. It was fun. I always like anything that's Western or cowboy, and I especially like East meets West. You know what I mean? Like I especially like that. Give me like a sort of half cowboy, half samurai type of thing, right? Like, it's fun. It's really fun to see these ideas sort of like juxtaposed and synthesized into some other thing, right? Like some new thing. So that was fun. Les Sserafim Unforgiven. It was a good time.